Yep, that's my Billy. He's been pretty sick, but he's better now. Bit of a change in video material. I'm going to tell you about what happened to poor old Billy. Evening all. For those of you who remember, that sounds a bit like Dixon and Doc Green. Long time ago, eh? Right, this is a bit of a different video. You may have seen him in the background when I've been working on the bikes. He's getting on a bit. Took me a long time to save up the money to buy him. A lot of people think, oh, he's got a big motorhome, he's rich. No, we're not rich. We just work bloody hard. Anyway, I digress. This is Billy. And Billy is 8.75 Burstner motorhome. Along with the bikes, he is my pride and joy. He's a bit grubby because he's been very, very sick. And he's had to have a new engine. And that did hurt us. That really did hurt us. Anyway, my piece to camera is to give you an idea of what this video is about. We had some problems after the new engine was put in, and the garage that did it, they worked their backsides off trying to find out what it was. But unfortunately, they couldn't really get to the point. And so we used somebody else that used to work for that same garage. Welcome back to Gary's Practical Workshop, folks. Ben's here today, and between us we're working on this. This is the man that did the engine for poor old Billy when Billy was sick, but we'll cover that later. But today we're putting this new pump in because we believe that the pressure in the motor, which is here, is very low. Now that's what's being reported. So rather than play around with the old pump, which I'll put on the film later, you'll see the old pump because that's in the workshop. We're putting this new one in, and the bar on this one is, according to the suppliers, is between, I believe they said 3 and 6. So that should give us enough pressure to keep the high pressure pump chock-a-block with fuel in order to resolve this hot start issue. We're going to film it as we go. The camera may wobble around, excuse us, because we are struggling in a small space, but Ben's now going to show you how this pump lowers and goes into the tank. And we're also going to do it with the sender attached, so you can see that it's not absolutely necessary to remove the sender. This bit does come out, but I'll cover that a bit later on the old pump. Okay, Ben, if you'd like to take it away.
Right, no problem.
As you can see, he's tilting it to get the sender in. And once that's in, hang on a sec, stop. Okay. I just had to grab the little vent I put in there. You can see the tube, the top here. This is for a diesel heater in the back. Is it locked on the arrow?
Yep. So that arrow's to here.
I noticed that because.
Yep.
You have to excuse hands and arms getting in the way, folks, but this is a tricky job. All right.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you can see that, guys. I'm going to remove my hand because too many hands spoil the broth, as it were. Ben's now tightening up that ring. And we may use the tool to snug it down.
So we're good to now tighten with that tool then?
Yeah. There's your tool. It's a bit of a pig to get in there with all the connectors. But we got it in there to get it off, so it can go on now to put it back on. probably about it, isn't it?
Yep, that's good.
Right, because we needed the room to get the ring off, guys, we had to put the pickup and the feed back, the flow off back, out the way as we did the vent, because there's not a lot of room. Ben's now going to put them back on, and they're little push fit clips that go onto the appropriate tubes. I don't think you can get them muddled up either, because they're different diameters.
Sizes, yeah.
And as you can see, folks, these are push button. To get these off, there's two little buttons in the side. But you've got to move that out first. I'll move my finger out of the way. Can you do that again, Ben?
Yep. So that's it locked. And then we push it backwards.
Yeah, there you go. And that applies to the green one. Yeah. Which exposes the buttons. And you push them in. They're a bit tricky. I found myself with the green one using a screwdriver just to ease that side in, because I couldn't get my finger in there. And the other thing I'd like to say at this point, guys, is I did cock up. I made a hole here, just in case a lot of you are wondering, and I've had to refill it, or fill it, with JB Weld. And the reason I cocked up, and I didn't realise at the time, was because the vent, which is here, tucked away, it would have been in the way of the pickup for the diesel heater. So the idea then was to try and measure up where we could put the nipple. And as you can see, I've settled here. I will put some pictures and links down below when we put all this together. And I will try and give you some photographs of where you can actually drill your hole, because if you get it wrong, these won't fit back in. So you have to be extremely careful. Now, there is a chap that says on YouTube, I've seen it, where you can put the hole there. But the trouble is, if you do that, this tube that comes off, I believe this is the feed, can be in the way, and you really don't want to foul that tube, or either one of them for that matter. So we're going to leave it like that for the time being. Probably put this one back on, or Ben will carry on, but it's just a few points which I'll cover probably in greater detail later. Over to you, Ben.
Lovely.
I could do a bit of diesel on the rings, couldn't it? There's a socket here. I think I had it in here, or maybe I took it back.
I've got one.
8 mil.
No problem. I'll just get one out the van.
Okie dokie. We're just going to use a little 8 mil socket to tighten down this little chap here, which is quite important, because that holds the vent in place. If I take if I video straight down on top of it, guys, you could see, hopefully, I'll take a still from the video when I do the editing, but you can see where that nipple is, and it is, even there, it's still very close to the yellow connector, but it is clear. You can use it like that. Okay, Ben's now going to tighten up that 8 mil nut to hold the vent in place. Doesn't need a lot, just gently, and that's it.
So we believe these nipples here, one of these two nipples, if your vehicle's ordered from factory, one of these is the night eater feed, and Fiat put a fitting in ready for a night eater fuel feed, and these come out underneath into the recesses.
Don't know if you can see that, folks, but there's a recess just there that Ben's referring to.
There's another one there. Right, so sender's fitted, all the pipes are now connected, as we can see. We can potentially under the bleed on the filter to try push the air out, but with past experiences we don't need to. What we need to do is cycle the ignition for 10 seconds, then we're going to switch it off for 5 seconds and back on, and that's going to shunt the air out the system and put where the air is, there'll be fuel, and then the vehicle will be ready to start.
Okay, in your own time.
So
that's one click just there. And if you listen carefully, folks,
you'll hear it stop in a second.
I don't know if the mic's going to pick that up, but we can hear the pump. This is the sender pump that we've just fitted. I think it's stopped now.
Okay, so I'm going to switch the ignition off.
Can you hear it?
I did hear it switch off.
Yes. Okay.
So we're just going to switch the ignition off and then we're going to go back on. So I'm going to put it back on now.
The pump is now running again for the second time. And now it's turned off.
Yes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch the ignition off. And we're going to now prepare to start the vehicle. So we're out of gear. I'm going to put ignition on. And I'm going to crank. That pump will permanently run with the engine running. So it's worth giving it 30 seconds for it to just
clear out,
move whatever air it wants to move and put back into the tank.
So for the people out there that might try this, Ben, could you just run through the procedure of actually what we've done from the point of finishing the installation of the pump and how they vent the system, how they prime the system?
So any work on the fuel system you would carry out, as in a fuel filter change, a housing change, a lift pump change. It's simple as cycle the ignition 10 seconds at a time, and that will pressurize the system at, as you said, 3 to 6 bar, and then whatever's in the filter, because the engine's not running, it will push back down the return into the tank. So we don't need to take any pipes off, we don't need to undo any vents or anything. We just purely cycle the ignition and that will push the air out, the vehicle will then start. And that applies to annual fuel filter change, anything along them lines that will prime and bleed the system.
Okay, that's Ben's description of what he's just covered. So any comments or any questions that you might want to ask, just stick them down below and then we'll come back to you in due course. Right folks, I don't know if you can see this here. It's here. I hope it brings it out on the video. Throttle valve. Now, when Ben was here last time, we had some strange things happen. It turns out, yeah, even though Fiat recommended that we remove the lifting pump, replace it, because the pressure was low from the tank to the high pressure pump on the engine, that was their diagnosis. It turns out that that was not the case. When Ben came round, who I have to say has worked really hard on this vehicle, we went through the whole process, as you'll see in the video, of changing the pump. Now, when that new pump was installed, we found out that it started okay, but then it would, because the engine was cold. So we left it running for a while, and would you believe, after about half an hour to an hour, letting the engine come up to working temperature, we killed the engine. Only to find that when we started it again, and this time the engine's hot, the problem had not gone away. Now Ben thought that it could be the throttle valve, so that was taken apart, looked at, cleaned up, just to try and eliminate it. There was no problems with the throttle valve. It turns out that it was a really crazy thing that caused the problem, and has been an ongoing crazy thing until Ben discovered it. And he said to me that whenever he was working where he worked before, every time you take an engine out of a vehicle, and this is something for you guys to really bear in mind, always look at certain areas of the engine, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute, I will come to it, But how did we find out what it was? Well, he had a diagnostic laptops here. Let me take you out the... We had a diagnostic laptop sitting here. Now obviously it's not here now because he's gone. And we also had a multimeter plugged in here to one of the terminals for reading the battery voltage. And to my absolute surprise, when we cranked the engine, on the software on the laptop here, we saw the peaks and the troughs, and there was a trough, it dipped right down to 9 volts, which struck me as quite weird. And I said, that's a bit strange. I remember saying that. He said, yeah, that's not right. And it was also confirmed because we had the multimeter attached to the same circuit, and that also dropped down to 9 volts. And I think the thing that made him think more than anything else, or what it was because when the engine was running, we were only getting some in the region of 13.2 or roughly 13 volts from the alternator. And that's something I know from dealing with other vehicles, that you should really be getting back 14.2 to 14.7, but we weren't. So what was it? Well, as I said earlier, I will tell you, whenever Ben's taking an engine out, and any of the guys that work with him where he worked before, one of the things he was really hot on was that you should always change or clean the earth strap. And this is a major thing. Now for a little strap, I've got one here, just bear with me, I'll go and get it. There you go, that's it. Doesn't look much, does it? But that is so important to get a good earth between the gearbox or engine and the chassis. And if you don't get that good earth, you don't get the right voltage going from the battery to the engine. Now this is what is very important when it comes to the electronics, because what was happening, and I didn't know this, what we believe was happening is because there wasn't enough volts coming from the battery to the engine management system because of this bad earth, the engine management system wasn't getting the right amount of power to analyze all the peripheral sensors around the engine. So consequently, it couldn't cope with a hot start because it was just not getting the right data. So it just goes to show how important this earth strap is. When the old earth strap was taken off and it was cleaned, wire brush cleaned thoroughly, Ben put it back on again, we started it, we let the engine get hot, and that must have taken about half an hour to an hour. And I remember saying, do you want to do the honors, see if you can start it up? No, he said, you go and do it. So I did, and would you believe, after the engine was hot, it started perfectly. But what really proved the point was we went back to the software on the laptop, and we went back to the multimeter, and we could see immediately the trough on the laptop with the software showing before where it dropped to 9 volts. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. So we knew that the engine and the alternator especially, was giving out the right amount of charge to the battery. The battery was that much more healthy, and therefore the engine management unit wasn't being starved of volts because it's got a good earth. So we did it several times just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. We turned it over, started it, stopped it, started it, stopped it, all when it was hot. And you could hear the difference. It was a smooth start. There wasn't any lumpiness. And I have to say, even when it's cold, you can see or you can hear the difference. It's a smoother start all round, all because it's got a good earth strap. So the pump was one thing on the video. This is something that I'd like just to let most people know that have got a Ducato, a Citroen Relay, well, any vehicle really, but especially these, because if you get a bad earth connection, then clearly it's going to cause a lot of running around to try and process what is going on, and this is the cause. So I hope that helps a lot of you guys if you do anything like this, because it just goes to show, as I said many times, how important the earth strap is. That's it for now. I will edit some of this. Some of it you will see, some of it you won't, because I've been waffling on quite a lot. but I just want people to know, and so does Ben, earth straps. On the subject of Ben has spent most of his life in fact all of his life since he was apprentice, working for a company in the North Midlands, or the North East Lincolnshire, and he does know his stuff, there is no doubt. Very impressed with his capabilities. I'm going to give you all his details later, and I hope if you get any problems with any of your motorhomes or your trucks, vans, with this this type of setup, or indeed any motor vehicle, do bear him in mind. I will give you all the details later.